Welcome back to the John and Linetia Show.
How was your Easter?
It was great. I played Stratego. How was yours?
Awesome. Got lots of candy from the Easter Bunny.
Okay.
Also, I was thinking, I guess it's a good thing that nailing the son of your boss or your creator to a piece of wood never really got popular as a valid form of protest.
I guess not. But thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Just saying.
Thank you so much.
Just saying.
Thank
It's a good thing
so
that never
much.
got popular. So, one of the things that has come up in the news and hasn't really been a big story, I guess you could say, was your friend, mine.
My friend is my friend. He's someone who I know.
Tyler Perry.
Tyler Perry. Yeah.
He posted a very long, kind of detailed story of what he thought was racial profiling that he experienced.
Yes.
And while I would agree in some things that he thought was a little, I completely disagree that it's the way he's characterizing it totally as racial profiling. So,
Okay.
to sum up, I've got his long post here. I don't think I'm going to read the whole thing, but so it says, I was leaving the studio, headed to the airport. Most of the times when I leave the studio, I have an unmarked escort.
Okay.
Other times, I constantly check in my rearview mirror to be sure that I'm not being followed. It's a safety precaution that my security team taught me. As I got to an intersection, I made a left turn from the right lane and was pulled over by 2 police officers. I pulled the car over and put it in park. Then I let the window down and sat in the car waiting for the officer. The officer came up to the driver's door and said I made an illegal turn. I said I signaled to get into the turning lane, then made the turn because I have to be sure I'm not being followed. He said, why do you think someone would be following you? Okay. Before I could answer him, I heard a hard banging coming from the passenger window. I had never been in this position before, so I asked the officer who was at my window what was going on and why is someone banging on the window like that. He said, let your window down, let your window down. Your windows are tinted. As I let down the passenger window, there was another officer standing on the passenger side of the car. He said, what's wrong with you? The other officer said to him, he thinks he's being followed. Then the second officer said, why do you think someone is following you? What's wrong with you? Before I could answer the officer on the passenger side, the one on the driver's side reached into the car and started pulling on the switch that turns the car on and off, saying, put your foot on the brake, put your foot on the brake. I was so confused as to what he was doing or what he thought he was doing. Looked like he was trying to pull the switch out of the dashboard. I finally realized that he thought the switch was the key, so I told him it wasn't the key he was grabbing. I reached down into the cup holder to get the key, not realizing the key had a black leather strap on it. As I grabbed it, they both tensed up, and I dropped it as I heard my mother's voice when I was a little boy. So basically, relates a story about his mom says, if you get stopped by the police, especially if they're white policemen, you say yes sir, no sir, and you don't resist. Don't make any quick moves, don't run.
Right.
Okay. So, later he says, the officer on the driver's side continues to badger me. Why do you think someone is following you? I then said, I think you guys need to just write the ticket and do whatever you need to do. It was so hostile, I was so confused. But one officer stopped his questioning and said, we may not let you go. You think you're being followed. What's wrong with you? At this point, I told him that I wanted to get out of the car. I wanted the passers-by to see what was happening. As I stepped out of the car, another officer pulled in front of my car. This officer was a black guy. He took one look at me and had that oh no look on his face. He immediately took both officers to the back of my car and spoke to them in a hushed tone. After that, one of the officers stayed near his car while one came back very apologetic. I said all of that to say this. Do you see how quickly this could have turned worse? That's what he was basically saying. Now, he talks about how there are great police officers out there, and we've made strides in racial profiling, but the world needs to know that we're still being racially profiled. And it brings up another case. At the end, he says, in capital letters, racial profiling should be a hate crime investigated by the FBI. So that was his whole story. Now, I look at this and I see something's wrong with his perception of things. Okay, now granted, let's talk about this as far as perception. Whenever I do something or I'm in an argument with somebody, my perception of things is that I'm right. I'm doing the correct thing, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not that's true, okay, I still may look at it and go, well, but I thought I did the right thing. Okay, so one thing I have a problem with this is that he talks about the story saying that, or he basically calls this racial profiling. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time calling this racial profiling because my understanding with racial profiling, it's like, driving while black. Oh, okay. Look, there's police officers there. They see a black person, and they're thinking, well, he's black, so he might. There's a high probability involved in a crime. So why don't we just pull him over and check it out? In this case, we find out that his windows are tinted. Uh-huh. Okay, he made a left turn from a right lane. Uh-huh. Okay, an illegal left turn. Uh-huh. Racial profiling in a lot of cases involves nothing illegal, just basically driving through a city and somebody, just looking at it and thinking, hey, I don't know, there might be something wrong. And the cops pull, these people over. He made an illegal left turn from the right lane. His windows were tinted, which leads me to believe, and of course it depends on how much tint is on the windows, but if your windows are tinted, you're outside the car, that's so that people don't see you inside the car, don't know who's inside the car. And likely the cops didn't know that there was a black man, that there was a white man, that there was a red man, that there was a blue man inside that car.
Okay.
And so I don't look at it as racial profiling. Now, part 2 of this is basically he felt that it was a very tense situation, especially with the cops and kind of how they conducted themselves. And I might agree to that, not knowing the full story of things. I think it's a little weird that he never answered the question, because he said, I made the turn because I wasn't, I had to be sure I'm not being followed. He never answered the question, why do you think someone would be following you? And they asked it repeatedly. Now, when cops ask you a question repeatedly and you don't answer that question, no matter how innocuous it is, they get agitated. I basically have the same issue with people. If I continually ask a question and they're not answering my question, it kind of agitates me.
Okay.
So, I look at this and I go, gee, Tyler, why didn't you say, well, I'm Tyler Perry and very, it's possible my security says that people could be coming after me or something like that. Now, there is also the likelihood that since it doesn't seem like he has gotten pulled over too many times, he just was, you could say, people get a little out of their minds where it's just sort of like they're not thinking straight. And, he's talking about it in terms of trying to think and do the right thing and think straight. And it could very well be that he was just sort of like shocked that he's being pulled over and it wasn't registering. They were asking him the question. And in his mind, he's like, well, why wouldn't you think I'm Tyler Perry? Which, I would have a hard time picking him off the street myself. So I on the one hand, I look at this and I go, I think the police, especially when they pull people over, there's a better way of doing things other than that kind of authoritative way of doing it. But I kind of look at this and I go, man, dude, you weren't profiled when you pulled over. You made an illegal turn. You got tinted windows. Nobody knows who's inside that car. Maybe they were in a neighborhood where there's, drug dealers with tinted windowed cars. I don't know. But I just kind of, I read this and on the one hand I went, wow, that could have escalated into something bad. Especially if the black officer hadn't come on the scene and recognized him as, hey, you the guy from Meet the Browns. or is he in that show?
He created the show.
You the guy in that fat suit in Big Mama's house.
Yes.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's just one of these things where I kind of, sometimes I look at things that people on both sides, white, black, red, blue, cyan, want to turn those cyan people. They're sensitive.
Great.
There's sometimes I think when people scream race, and I don't know necessarily that it is.
Okay. I'm going to have to disagree with you this time, John.
What do you disagree?
I'm going to have to disagree with you. Okay. First of all, you said that racial profiling is driving while black, and it's not. It's not. It's not. It's pulling over anyone who's non-white. Okay. Okay. Let's get down to open. So that
I gave that again. Driving while black is like racial profiling.
Okay. Let's get that. It's any race that's
anyone who's non-white.
Non-white.
So those cyan people that get pulled over.
Yes, they can get pulled over too.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. That's the first thing.
Right.
The second issue I have with this is the fact that he had been trying to answer questions, and before he could answer the questions, the policeman still badgered him. That's two. Then you gotta look at your definition.
So you think this is rapid fire? He's just kind of
not
like
rapid fire, but before he could think of the right thing to say.
Why do you think it'd be followed?
It could be like that.
Okay.
It could be like that.
You know what? You could be right. You could be right.
And he didn't have a chance to say.
Could be.
What's going on?
Could be.
Okay. Plus, yeah, I'm pretty sure that sometimes when you see a police officer, it could be intimidating.
Yeah.
I could understand that.
I am.
But I still don't see. He admitted he did wrong. He said that.
Right.
He said that, right? The first thing you're supposed to ask when you pull over somebody is license and registration. That still wasn't asked here. They didn't ask him for that. Where's your license and registration?
Right.
They didn't ask him for that. Okay, so I'm feeling something else here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, racial profiling can start when you pull over somebody who's non-white, when you see them in a car for any reason, right?
Now, are you saying that they saw him through the tinted windows?
No, I'm saying, let me get the point out.
Give me my point.
Okay, so, no, they did not know he was black until he rolled down the window.
So it's not racial profiling.
But racial profiling has different definitions. It's not just that. It's not. And that's why he's calling it.
I don't see it.
Well, from what I've read,
okay,
this is just what I've read, and of course, this is just public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it's right. It could be any type of police action relying on race, ethnicity, or national origin, rather than behavior of an individual. He didn't get out of hand. He didn't do anything, but they still harassed him.
But he didn't answer the questions.
He didn't have a chance to. They didn't let him. He said, before I could answer him, I heard a banging from the passenger window.
Right.
They still asked him.
Okay. And I agree that they probably didn't conduct themselves in the best way. Okay.
Right. He didn't say that.
All right.
Another thing, racial bias policing occurs when law enforcement inappropriately considers race or ethnicity in deciding with whom and how to intervene in an enforcement capacity. How that relates to this is, I think they assumed he was something else besides the illegal turn he made. You know what I mean? Besides that.
Oh, you mean in order to pull over that? That car, you're thinking, oh, there's a tinted car. Maybe he's got it blinged out or something.
Yes.
And it could be a Catholic priest with naked 10-year-old boys in there.
It could be.
Okay.
You just never know. But the thing is, we don't know what's going through the policeman's mind.
But isn't that tinted car profiling?
No, it's not. But thanks for bringing that up. But no,
it could be. No, it could be a white guy in there.
No, it could be. I just don't think when Tyler Perry rolled down the window and it was Pete or Peter Perry, I don't think that they would have harassed him as much as they've done in this case.
Well, I mean that's a tough one to say.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. Mm-hmm. In that case. I mean, like I said, I think the cops could have handled the situation better. not as authoritative. I think that's a problem with a lot of law enforcement, in basically being that authoritative in all cases. We don't know about the neighborhood. We don't know what his car looked like. We don't know how the tinting was. But I have a hard time. You know, you could say race may have played into it as far as how the cops were talking to him, but I don't see racial profiling because they pulled over a car that made an illegal turn. They couldn't see who was in it because it was tinted.
But they still never wrote the ticket out.
Well, no,
They never wrote the ticket?
No, because ultimately he got off because he's Tyler Perry.
But that was after the black policeman pulled out and let them know who he was.
Yeah.
That was afterwards. But they still never wrote a ticket.
Right.
They didn't ask him for license and registration.
Well, we don't know how long. We don't know the time.
They didn't do any of this.
You know, we don't know if this took place in a half hour. We don't know if this took place in 3 minutes. It very well could have been bam, 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 bam.
Why didn't they run his plates? If they ran his plates, they would have saw that he was Tyler Perry.
Well, I don't know necessarily that you can get a hint right away when you run plates. In a car.
I'm sorry,
and with
John.
any kind of a traffic stop, I don't know that you automatically would.
I don't know, John. I'm just feeling like there's a little something in it that needs to be questioned.
I'm saying that there is stuff that needs to be questioned. I just don't call it. I don't think it's racial profiling at all. And I don't like that kind of term being bandied about because he deserved to be pulled over.
I'm not saying he didn't.
Yeah.
He made the legal turn.
Right.
That's fine. But when they didn't ask him the series of questions that police officers should have asked him, and he rolled down the window and they saw that he was a black man, they still badgered him. That's when the problem came in.
But you don't know that they wouldn't badger me in that situation.
I didn't say they wouldn't.
Right.
I didn't say they wouldn't.
So it may not be racial as much as it's the police being a little too heavy-handed.
I don't know. I've heard so many different cases of so many things that policemen do and don't do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still feeling a little something's not right here. And I'm wondering if it's going to blow up really, really bad because it is Tyler Perry.
I got a feeling it's not, and I heard that the federal government is actually looking into it. So we'll see.
Right. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who have gotten pulled over for nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For nothing. It's a shame.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back after these words from God, who has the following message to everybody. Go Cubs.
You're listening to the John and Linetia Show.